years in Egypt, followed by 7 terrible years of drought and famine. A wise ruler should prepare for such a calamity. You should save up for the rainy day, or in this case, save up for the non-rainy day, where it's going to be a drought. But who can manage such a big project? Who is wise enough to get all this done, to manage all those people, preparing the food, putting it away in barns, rationing it out, organising the teams, getting everything done? Who can do all that? We need a wise young man with plenty of energy. Well, Joseph, of course. He's standing right in front of you. God now provides a way for Joseph to be promoted in a flash from a prisoner to Prime Minister, a bit like Nelson Mandela all those years ago. Let's read chapter 41, verse 39. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." Joseph becomes the second most powerful person in Egypt, and he was 30 years of age. And all goes, of course, according to God's plan. Egypt is saved through Joseph's wisdom and God's revelation. It's taken 13 years, but God's plan is slowly being revealed. How will such a small clan of misfits, how will they become a great nation? Well, the groundwork now has been laid, and God has put his man in the right place. Joseph is both a Hebrew and a powerful Egyptian, sitting at the right hand of ultimate power, ready to make the way for his family. Israel, to become what they're going to become, a great nation, needs a sponsor. They need someone to take them under their wing and help them to grow into their destiny that God had for them. And now they're in the right place to get it. Joseph is the one who goes before them into that land and creates a space for them now to come into and to flourish. And that's what the second half of this story is all about. And this second half of the story is very curious, because we scratch our heads as the story unfolds and we think, why is Joseph giving these brothers such a hard time? Why doesn't Joseph simply search for his family, bring them to safety, since he is such a powerful man? God must be up to something, and that's really what is happening here. Due to the famine in Canaan, Jacob sends his sons to Egypt to purchase grain. This begins a cat and mouse game between Joseph, who hides his true identity from his brothers, and this testing of their integrity. That's really what's going on in this next second half. Joseph seems to be very interested to learn whether his brothers have grown up, whether they have mended their selfish and cruel ways. So begins a series of tests designed to measure their love for their younger brother, who he once was himself. And now he is thinking that his little brother, Benjamin, is at the behest of these other group of mafia brothers. Have they learnt to love their little brother like they didn't learn to love me? Have they matured in love, in truth, and in righteousness? So when the brothers come to purchase grain from Joseph and from Egypt, Joseph accuses them of being spies, straight out. Why are you here in the land? You've come here for some other reason. You want to spy on us. No. Oh, we're not doing that. We've got this old father back there, and we've got this younger brother back with him. But Joseph doesn't listen. He imprisons Simeon and tells the others to go back and return with the younger brother Benjamin to prove their story. The brothers see this as a punishment from God for their treatment of Joseph all those years ago. It causes them to reflect. You can almost hear the background music playing as they're reflecting. Why is this happening to us? Maybe it's happening because of the way we treated Joseph. So they sort of come to this realization that God is working on them. Joseph secretly arranges to put their silver pouches that they brought with them, sort of to buy all this grain, back in their bags to mess with their heads. Why are they suddenly there? I thought we gave it to the Egyptians and now all the money's back in our pouches, on our donkeys, on all our camels. They're like, why? And this is messing with them. They don't know what's going on. But old Jacob refuses to let Benjamin go. I lost one son. I'm not going to lose my other son, young son. And so they return a second time years later to purchase more grain, this time with Benjamin, and double the amount of silver. And Joseph is pleased with them and holds a great banquet. Joseph sees his younger brother Benjamin and is moved to tears, but he doesn't cry in front of the others. He goes into a room and bursts out crying. In fact, he doesn't even eat with them, because Egyptians shouldn't eat with shepherds like them. They're considered dirty and unclean. However, they still have a big feast. After the tears, he lets them go back to Jacob, but secretly arranges for his special silver cup to be placed in Benjamin's saddlebag. Soon after they are on their journey, they are stopped by the cops in a random cup test. And the silver cup is discovered. Panic sets into the brothers. Now they are in deep trouble. One of us, our younger brother, has stolen Jacob's cup. My God, what have we done? Joseph plays it all up as much as he can, and telling them that now Benjamin must become his slave in punishment. The brothers plead with Joseph, still not knowing really who he is at all. They don't even know that he is Joseph, because he's got a shaved head, he's dressed as an Egyptian, probably got makeup on. And so they ask, instead of taking Benjamin, their younger brother, the apple of their father's eye, they will stay and let Benjamin return to his father. Otherwise, their father will be too devastated. These brothers have been faced with 3 tests that Joseph has set for them. The test of honesty. And they passed that test. They did tell the truth about their brother and their father back there, and they've come there to get grain. The test of integrity. Will they do the right thing, not just say the right thing? And third, the test of love and self-sacrifice. All these 3 tests have been designed to humble the brothers and to break these guilty brothers down, to get them to a place where Joseph and God is happy with them. We can see the progression of God's work shaping and moulding these very loose men. When once they lied and deceived their father Jacob about Joseph, now they speak the truth, even though it was costly to them. When once they showed a lack of integrity, behaving bad enough for a bad report and selling off their brother, now they do the right thing and come clean about the mysterious silver placed in their bags. They come out and say, oh, we didn't steal it, it was just there. And they bring it back. When once they despised their younger brother who was favoured by the father, now they love little Benjamin. Well, he's old now, he's probably about 30, and they protect him. And even Judah is prepared to take the place of Benjamin and to become Joseph's slaves. Just let our younger brother go. And it is when Joseph sees that the level of love between them, when he sees their big heart now, that the testing is over. In a flood of pent-up emotion, he reveals himself to them, that I am actually Joseph, who you thought was dead. It is clear at this point that not only has God provided for them, but he has significantly changed these wild brothers. These actions of Joseph are not to be interpreted as revenge, but as Joseph assuming a role he senses God has prepared for him to play in his own family, as revealed in the dream all those years ago. Chapter 45, verses 1 to 7 says this. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence." So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." And when they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will not be ploughing or reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve you a remnant on earth, to save your lives by a great deliverance." Later, God speaks to Jacob and reassures him that it's okay to go into Egypt. But one day, God will bring them all back to the promised land. In the end, they live in the best part of Egypt, the most prosperous and beautiful part. And they grow and prosper under Pharaoh's protection. And when old Jacob dies, the brothers get very anxious that now Joseph will take his full revenge on them, since the father's out of the picture. And then the story really does conclude with these sort of summary that Joseph tells to the very scared brothers. In chapter 50, verse 18, we read, "His brothers then came and threw themselves down before him. We are your slaves," they said. But Joseph said to them, "Don't be afraid. I am in the place of God. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Beautiful summary to wrap up the whole thing. Why did God do all this? How is God going to make this small little tribe, this small little family into a great nation? Through Joseph, through their betrayal and mistreatment of Joseph, and also through the refining that's been taken place in the brothers' lives. God wanted these leaders of the households to become righteous men. He didn't want to just leave them as they were, but he worked on their life through Joseph to refine them, to make them more godly, and to make them into men who could serve God. The characteristics of Joseph are very clear. He trusted in God. He acknowledged God, the Father of his father, the ultimate Father, and that God was the one who gave the interpretation to the dreams. He showed patience, perseverance, and resilience in all his troubles. In all the hardships he went through, he didn't lose it. He didn't drop his bundle when confronted with disappointments that we so often do. He showed wisdom, the plan to save up for a rainy day or a non-rainy day, and to organise the necessary work. He was clearly a young man of great intelligence and skill. But he also showed a soft heart and forgiveness. He forgave his older brothers for their mistreatment. He was also crafty in the way he played the game with his brothers, but it was all part of God's will to humble those men. But he was a man of great integrity who resisted Potiphar's wife's temptations and said no to sin. I think the most significant event here is the climax. It's the reunion of the family with Joseph. It's the joining of these two stories, making sense now of how God's going to do it and why he's been doing all this stuff. It's now this young family, this small band is now in a safe place and can flourish. It makes sense of the whole story and fulfills the dream prophecy at the start. Joseph helps us as Christians in many ways. There's the obvious one, of course, that you may have heard whole sermons about Joseph just about prospering in the midst of predicament, or some other way of expressing that. That's something we can all gain from. How do we respond to hardship? We need grace and integrity. We need to keep our head in all situations. It also helps us to remind us that there are no coincidences in the kingdom of God. All things work according to God's plan and his predestined purpose. He is the one in control, and this story beautifully shows that. It shows to God's presence in the midst of hardship. Joseph, I believe, is a type of Christ, even though the New Testament never says that. However, this is what some commentators say about Joseph and how he relates to Jesus for us, how Joseph can bless us. Temper Longerman, a great scholar, said, reading the story of Joseph in the light of the gospel leads the sensitive reader to note that an analogy between the way God worked salvation through the life of Joseph and how he did so climactically in the life of Jesus. He says Joseph here anticipates an even greater rescue. Another commentator says Joseph prefigures Jesus and reminds us of him. And Tim Keller says, Jesus is the true and better Joseph, who at the right hand of the great king forgives those who betray and sold him and uses his new power to serve his people. It gives us a fresh and, I suppose, lively new way of seeing Jesus, that he is like Joseph, mistreated, betrayed, and yet God's blessing was fully upon him, to the point where he himself is placed in a position where he can save others. Let's pray.